The Raiders have an extra third-round pick this year, which will be the 74th overall. So with the Raiders landing the 4th overall pick after a rough season, it's not all bad news, especially since this draft class has some real talent, particularly at quarterback. If you look at the mock draft setup, the Patriots have taken a wide receiver, the Jaguars picked a cornerback, and the Saints selected a defensive lineman. But I'm not sure any of that will actually happen. For instance, I don't expect Toria McMillan to be the first wide receiver, and Mason Graham being the 3rd overall pick seems unlikely too. If the Raiders could trade up to the number 1 pick, we'd go for a quarterback, no doubt about it. Our quarterback situation is seriously rough, and if we don't get a strong prospect, we can forget about landing a top offensive coordinator like Ben Johnson. Recently, Adam Schefter reported that Johnson will be very selective about where he goes, and he won't consider dysfunctional teams. This could even mean the Raiders are ruled out unless we improve. Now, PFF ranks Jalen Milroe pretty high, around 5th overall, with Cam Ward at 15, Sanders at 21, and Garrett Newsome at 53. Interestingly, some people think Newsome could end up being the top quarterback of the class. His stock has been skyrocketing over the past 2 weeks, and many scouts say he has the best arm in this class. He's a solid pocket passer who can also move well. More like Justin Herbert than a stationary quarterback. For now, though, I'm leaning toward Cam Ward. Ward is experienced, with 5 years in college football, and his tape shows impressive processing ability. He just looks ready for the NFL. While a quarterback is a top priority, the Raiders could also use a new wide receiver. This draft class is packed with wide receiver talent. I wouldn't be surprised if 10 go in the first 2 rounds. Some names to watch include Ty Felton from Maryland and Trey Harris from Mississippi. The Raiders could also look at an offensive lineman to protect whoever our future quarterback will be. DJ Glaze might be our long-term answer at right tackle, but he'll need to prove himself over the rest of this season and in the offseason. If not a lineman, there's always room for more defensive talent. Derek Harmon, for instance, is getting first-round buzz. The Raiders do have Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, and Malcolm Kuntz, plus veteran Adam Butler, but Butler is already in his 30s, so we need to think about the future. Just look at the Green Bay Packers, who kept building their roster to stay strong on defense. Despite already having 2 starting-caliber defensive ends, the Packers kept strengthening their defensive line by drafting Rashawn Gary. Now they have a strong rotation with 3 talented defensive ends. 2 years ago, they traded one of their linemen, only to draft Lucas Van Ness the following year. So now, with players like Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt on the line, they're in good shape. Great teams keep building depth even when they already have good players. They develop that talent so they're ready for the future. For the Raiders, that means we need to start thinking about our defensive tackle depth. Adam Butler has maybe 1 or 2 seasons left with us, and Malcolm Kuntz might not be around much longer either. Tyree Wilson could step up, but our defensive tackle position could still use some reinforcements. That's where someone like Derek Harmon comes in. Harmon has looked great since transferring to Oregon, and he's showing real first-round potential. Some scouts think he could even go higher than Mason Graham in the draft due to his high upside. Adding a defensive tackle like Harmon would give us a strong foundation to develop into a competitive unit. The Raiders have 2 picks in the 3rd round, 68th and 74th overall, plus later picks in the 4th and 5th rounds. With these picks, it makes sense to consider a running back as well. Right now, running backs seem to be getting more room to succeed, thanks to defensive schemes like Cover 2 that keep safeties farther back. We're seeing more light boxes on defense, which opens up the run game. This shift has been great for players like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Chuba Hubbard, who have all had recent success on the ground. This draft class is strong at the running back position. Some names that stand out are Tre'Veyon Henderson from Ohio State, Todd Brooks from Texas Tech, Trevor Etienne from Georgia, and Woody Marks from USC, who might just be the most underrated back in the class. Oregon's Jordan James is another name to watch. We could even wait until the fourth round to draft a running back if we want to take our time. But for now, I'm going with Tre'Veyon Henderson. He's one of the best options, and I've watched a lot of his play at Ohio State. Trevor Etienne is another player I like, and he could be a strong option here too. Maybe the Raiders end up drafting more than one running back. Who knows? But it's smart to pick one of the top running backs now while we have the chance. Besides a running back, we're also looking at the offensive line. The Raiders are in a unique position here because it's not clear if we need a new right tackle. Ideally, I'd like to see DJ Glaze really take a shot at solidifying that role. This draft class for tackles isn't the strongest, so unless we're taking someone in the first round, I think it's better to hold off. Instead, it would be smart for the Raiders to draft a guard. Going into next season, we don't want to rely on Dylan Parham as our only guard, with just Jordan Meredith as backup. Is Andre Pete the long-term solution? Probably not. The Raiders need a guard they can count on for years to come, and luckily, this draft class has some strong options. Over on my YouTube channel, I've covered the NFL draft in depth, and one of the best interior linemen out there is Tate Ratledge. He's a physical, powerful player who stands out among this year's prospects. Alabama also has a couple of promising interior linemen. For the Raiders, drafting someone like Ratledge would be a solid choice to strengthen the offensive line, so let's pull the trigger on him. Now, looking at other positions, the Raiders could use a long-term corner or safety. Jack Jones has shown potential, but it's uncertain how he'll pan out. One player that stands out is Nick Emenwari from South Carolina. He's not only solid against the run, but also a strong coverage safety, with Mel Kiper ranking him as the 25th overall prospect. Although he might not go in the first round, he has excellent potential to grow into a reliable starting safety. Marcus Epps, who's recovering from injury, may not be with the team long-term, so drafting a safety like Emenwari would help solidify our secondary. This draft class is also deep at wide receiver, running back, and tight end. The Panthers, for example, have built an arsenal of young talent at these positions, adding players like Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette, who've really stepped up. It's the same approach other successful teams take, loading up on weapons and building a strong offensive line. This approach has helped teams like the 49 ERs, and it's time the Raiders did the same. Looking at some wide receiver options, there's T.Z. Johnson, Jimmy Horn Jr., Will Shepard, and Leone Wester, all of whom have upside. Deion Burks from Oklahoma is another name I like for his skill set, so let's take him here to add another playmaker. We could also consider a tight end, as this draft has several with good potential, or maybe even another offensive tackle if the right player is available. With Deion Burks on board, this draft class really sets the Raiders up for long-term success. We've got a quarterback, a future defensive tackle, a running back, a wide receiver, a guard, and a safety. It covers multiple key positions and gives the team the depth needed to compete. Let me know your thoughts on this draft for the Raiders. Give a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more content. See you next time.